Guys, there's been a lot of new faces around here, so I want to introduce you to Zepla. Zepla is a ex-WoW player. I guess is the phrase we're using these days. WoW refugee is, I think, the new one. I really don't think I like it. And she is, she's a big 14 creator. She's talked a lot about how 14 is the only game she needs to play. And right now she's making a video on what makes Final Fantasy XIV unique. And I thought as a contrast to covering all these WoW people coming over, this is a way of kind of tackling that topic for all the new faces as we invite people in, no matter where they're coming in. It's a great time to start playing Final Fantasy XIV. They're putting a ton of emphasis on the free trial. They heavily discounted the game for a little bit post FanFest to really invite people in. And I think there is a question of like, why Final Fantasy XIV? So let's dive in.
Hey Buns, today I want to talk about what makes Final Fantasy XIV so unique, so special. What is it that is in the secret sauce? Because yes, probably any of these ingredients that I will mention, maybe you could think of that ingredient in some other game. But I want to talk about how they all come together to make this special sauce. What is in it? What is the secret? What is in the Krabby Patty? That's what we're going to talk about here today. Lately, we have had a massive influx of new players coming to play Final Fantasy XIV, and I've seen a ton of new players joining the Discord server, in the Twitch chat. I constantly see new people coming in and asking questions. And one thing I very often have been seeing repeated from especially people coming from WoW is that, oh, this is so refreshing. This is like a breath of fresh air for me. And that is an experience that I had. You know, I came from WoW as well. I mean, I was a very hardcore WoW player before. And I wanted to kind of pin down what is it that's so refreshing about this game. One thing that really does come to mind that I think maybe the most important thing, because I feel like it has a bit of a trickle-down effect and has a positive impact on all the rest of the game and is the reason why so many other things are good. And that is the fact that the devs really care about the game, not only the game, but also the players. It is, to an extent, I think, that has transcended the boundaries of what is normal in game development by a lot. It has truly become something extraordinary.
This band playing is the Primals, and like there are people I don't know who all the people in the Primals are, but I know some of them are like people who work on the dev team. So like Michael Christopher Koji Fox is like the head of English translation or whatever, has a huge impact on the game, and he's one of the vocalists. So like it's it's pretty awesome.
One thing I have not been able to stop thinking about, and that is like one of the reasons I feel this way, is because of Soken's speech that he gave at FanFest just a week or two ago, and Yoshida's involvement in that speech. I would encourage you, watch that speech, listen.
Soken is on the left. He's who does a lot of our music. That's Michael Christopher Koji Fox. Koji does a lot of the things for. He's a really interesting person to listen to translate. So as one of the English players of this game, he's an interesting person to kind of have an interaction with. This is Yoshi P, our, and then this is, I believe he's an encounter designer, if I remember correctly. Drawing a blank on his name. Yoshi P is our director and producer. Soken came out at FanFest and announced that he had cancer during Shadowbringers. Didn't announce it to his team because he didn't want it to impact the schedule for Endwalker and kind of distract from work. And he wanted to keep working as normal. He wanted there to be some semblance of normal in his life. And I think there's a couple things with both that subject and what Zepla's saying here that I want to be really careful about how I navigate as best as possible. I don't like this separation that what trickles down from the top is passion, because I think there's some false equivalencies that naturally follow. It's a really dangerous line to walk. So appreciating passion is important. I think it's great that it regularly gets called out. But to imply that passion is what makes this game great, in my opinion, says that passion is that top ingredient, and that if you simply find passionate people, you will have a good game. If you simply could find a way to quantify passion and you could just throw money into passionate people's hands, that you will have a successful business, that you will have a successful game, it will work. The servers will go live, everything will be smooth, people will love the content, and it will just succeed. And that's just not true in any business. Passion alone, like businesses regularly go out, new businesses fail all the time in the United States, and a lot of times it's because somebody starts something that they're passionate about and they don't have the follow through, they don't have the business acumen, because they're trying to figure it out. And some make it through that process and some don't. And to imply that the ones that succeed are the ones who cared kind of says that the ones who didn't, by its very nature, don't care. Us being thankful that Soken gave what he did and cared for the game and worked on it while cancer, I think that's amazing and it's incredible and it's inspirational. But at the same time, I want to be very careful to say, if you have a family member or a friend or you yourself get cancer and you don't feel like working a full-time schedule, that's okay too. And this idea that he made it through it because he's a good person, that's a really dangerous equivalency that I see that, he got that because that implies that people who don't aren't. And so to imply this passion implies that people who work on other dev teams don't have passion, that working under crunch, working underpaid, getting hate on the internet for things, they just tolerate that for something that they don't care that much about. And I think that's a really dangerous thing because that's a confirmation bias of sorts, where good teams have passion, so therefore passion is required to be a good team, and it doesn't necessarily go the other way. So saying non-passionate teams aren't going to make it into the good teams, that might be a more fair statement. But to say that passion is what separates people into good teams, that's not necessarily true. There are plenty of passionate people that work on games that don't succeed.
Listen to it in Soken's own words. Let him tell you this story. It is worth it because it's really a personal message from him to you, the player, which is why that's what I'm talking about here, this relationship. And I will put a link to that in the description box below. Essentially, he was talking about his cancer diagnosis, how he had been working on Final Fantasy XIV from the hospital bed for 6 or 7 months, not telling anybody else besides Yoshida about it. And he's in remission now, so that's something to celebrate. But he said that seeing all those reactions from the players around the world while he was in the hospital room, it helped me so much to fight the cancer I have. He said, you can't forget, it's all of you and all of your love that brought me back. And I realized through all of this that video games can really heal. Then Yoshida joined in, and Yoshida was like crying, and obviously, you see the love that they have for each other on the dev team. And Yoshida said that Soken had told him during this time, we have to keep going. We have to do it for the players. The best cure for my cancer is the cheer from the fans. At a certain point, it really becomes more than just about, a job where you work on a game and you put out the content. It's like, this has become something much, much greater. And like, I feel it, I feel the love that they put into the game. I have that love for the game and I have that love for them too. I'm just so happy that he's back. For those who don't know, Soken is the sound director and composer for Final Fantasy XIV, and as such, he's responsible for one of the major aspects of 14's uniqueness, which is its incredible soundtrack.
Massive soundtrack.
So often I have people on the stream come in and ask, like, wait, is this the in-game music? And I'm always very happy to say yes. Yes, it is. Maybe because of the fact it's also an MMO, it's an online service. We have this ongoing connection with them.
If you didn't see this performance that he's doing right now, incredible. Google Lahi, L-A space H-E, Soken, S-O-K-E-N. It's he's a funny guy. He's an incredible vocalist and everything. So this is it's for the lulz.
Where it's this living, breathing, evolving thing where like they give us the content and we all celebrate it and we're like, oh, that was amazing, and then like they're happy about that, or they see what we don't like and they try to adjust it, and it's like almost like a co-creative sort of experience where like our bond strengthens over time as we know that they're listening and we grow to trust them more. It's like feels very healthy. I know that
there it is. That's the part that I think is the difference. Passion alone is present on dev teams. There are people passionately working on indie titles that will never have success, and that is not a dig on their passion. It is not a dig on their effort. It is not a dig on the number of hours they worked, and if those hours were really hard work, that is not a promise of success. It's a lottery ticket towards success. You have to do those things to succeed, but doing those things alone will not guarantee success. And but the difference that I think Final Fantasy XIV does that she's hitting on here is communication. Regular, steady, transparent communication in good times and in bad. To come through and share their deepest, saddest moments was not the first time we'd heard from them. This was at the end of a long weekend that was just the most recent communication from them. Between interviews and live letters and live events and written letters on things like forums and in dev blogs, we hear from the Final Fantasy XIV team probably 100 times a year. And when you compare that to the amount of that you hear, especially when things are going poorly, where dev teams usually are trying to get nose down and they tend to go silent because they don't want to say something that turns out wrong, or they don't want to say something that sets the wrong expectations, and so they choose to just let us sit there and make up our own version of what's happening. That's incredibly dangerous. And has it screwed them? Absolutely. But they've gotten a lot of practice. They've been doing this at this pace the whole time. And so what that means is anytime they've overshared something in the past, rather than say, let's just not talk at all in the future, they've said, you know what, maybe in the part 2s of live letters, we don't need to reveal the job changes, and we'll let that trickle into the patch notes, because what we've learned is job changes in particular appearing, there's part 1 of a live letter, and then several weeks go by, and then there's part 2, and 2 weeks later the patch drops, telling people the job changes 2 weeks before, while some of the numbers are still adjusting, and while they don't have the full content picture to go with it, has actually caused a lot of people to feel like, oh, my job's getting worse, and for no reason, and be very frustrated. And so what they've learned over time is that job changes in part 2 of a live letter give them the chance to keep people content, or worse, it never improves people's mood. So just don't talk about them. Talk about all the other stuff, not stop talking altogether. I think communication here, that relationship, that back and forth is the thing that really does a great job setting them apart from the vast majority of dev teams. I don't know any dev team of this scale that communicates more times per year than Final Fantasy XIV. Sheer quantity makes a huge difference, because even if the communication is filler, hey, next expansion's going to have story and dungeons and trials. Okay. The fact that we've seen their face, the fact that we've heard their voices, the fact that we've read their words, even through translators, tells us where they're at, gives us some context. Even if they're answering questions they've answered 100 times before, that slight change in the phrasing gives us some context in a new light. And that's what gives them the slack in the line when they need to cut content, when they need to have a delay. It's what gives them patience within the community. It's what gives them a place that they already can come in, and it's not the first time I've heard from them in 6 months is about some delay. It's about them saying that they've heard me when their answers to questions say they haven't. No, it's a whole dialogue, and it's back and forth, and it's regular intervals, and I think that that's something that really sets them apart.
That Square Enix is a company. They are a business. They are a corporation. And, I often try to remind myself the corporation is not your friend. But these people, Yoshida, Soken, Koji, all these beautiful people that are working on this game, I think they really do love us. Players feel, oh, I'm taken care of, and it makes them want to take care of each other. I think that's one of the reasons we have such a healthy community. I was in the new Nier raid the other day at the tower, and there was a new person there, and he was freaking out in the chat, and he was making all kinds of mistakes, and he kept apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry, I'm terrible, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And there's like 24 people in this raid, and everybody was writing back like, hey, you're fine, you're new, you're learning, it's okay, like, chill out. And I was like, not a single person said to this guy, yeah, you're bad, you should uninstall, or like, just learn to play. Nobody said anything like that. Everybody was just like cheering him on and like telling him to just relax a little bit. And that is not to say there are not toxic people in this community. So if you have a toxic experience, do not assume that it is uniquely you and that you did something wrong. There are people that have had a bad day, or just think that crapping on someone else's day is a good way to communicate in any community. They absolutely exist in the 14 community. But by and large, you should have a fairly great experience, especially if you say you're new, especially if you have that sprout symbol next to your name. The community in general is incredibly tolerant and welcome of new players that are here to just honestly give the game a try. But to say that there's not toxicity, I think, just to kind of clarify that for anybody that's like, well, maybe it's just me then. No. Just keep playing, and over time, right? You just rolled the dice and hit 1 2 or 3 times in a row. The way to not make that seem weird is keep rolling the dice. I promise it's not all ones. That's just 1 out of 6. You just happen to have hit it 3 times in a row. Keep at it. super refreshing. So yeah, I mean, you feel the sense of belonging, you feel the sense of welcoming, being welcomed, I mean, and I really do think that that is a direct result of the way that the devs treat the players. I think that there's some kind of relationship happening there that leads to healthy relationships all around. And I know there's probably already somebody typing right now like, oh, but I had a really bad experience. There was one guy who was a dick to me. Yeah, obviously, we live in reality still. There's going to be some bad apples here and there, but no, I don't think that most people are like that. I think the majority of people are cool. I have to say that every single time I say the community is good, because there's always somebody like, good community, by the way. So, I said it, okay? I know. Good community, by the way. One thing I really like about Final Fantasy 14 as a person that is generally annoyed when people tell me what to do is not really being told what to do. Now, this can be positive and negative. There can be a situation where you're a new player and you're not being told what to do and you have absolutely no idea where to go or what's going on. It's pretty common, but I think it's better than a situation where you log in and you're presented with a checklist of things that you need to do right away, or you're going to fall behind. If you don't do these things right now, it's going to suck for you later. Instead, especially at end game, like I realize when you're leveling, you're going through quest to quest, and you might feel like, oh, here's a chain of things, but I mean, there's no rush. You don't have to do that next quest right away. You can go unlock a new job. You could go do your hunting log or something. But especially at end game, it really often feels like an open slate. Like this is big.
To new players that do want a curated on-the-rails experience directly to endgame, you only need to do your main scenario quest. We refer to it as MSQ, and the job quest. And so on your UI, there's a little quest with a little flame. You can click on that. It'll pull it straight up. You don't have to find it in your quest log. You can click it straight from there. And just below it, there, if you have a job quest available, a little subtext will appear. Those are all that have to do. At this point in the game, they have tuned it, so those will grant plenty of experience to get you all the way to cap. You'll actually over-level. If you wonder why something hasn't unlocked and people tell you what level something unlocks, you actually want to look, you want to click on that, and when it opens up your quest log, you actually want to see the level of the quest that you're on, not the level of your character, because you're going to out-level it by so much that if the next dungeon that you want to get to unlocks at 38, and you're like, but I'm 46, yes, because you have out-leveled it, because they wanted to make sure that they've tuned it to the point where there is almost no way after about the level 5 or 6 quest to not be ahead. And that's very intentional. That's by design. You don't have to know about food buffs. You don't have to have gotten the experience boost ring from Hall of the Novice, or have gotten the pre-order earring to give you an experience boost, or any of these other things. Be on a server that gives you a road to 70 buff or anything. You don't need to know any of the tricks that we use for leveling alts. You can literally just do the MSQ and class quest if you want that, like, what do I need to do? Outside of that, quests that have the little blue cross on them, that means they unlock something as little as an emote, something as big as a dungeon. So if you want to add one more thing to that list, go ahead and knock those out, or else you can just come back once you have flying unlocked and knock them out later.
Playground to dive into and do whatever I feel like doing. Like, do I want to go level? Do I want to get tomestones today? Do I want to do hunts? Do I want to do beast tribe? Do I want to do side quests? Maybe I want to do sightseeing. Do I want to go for a relic, new relic, old relic, PvP? Like, there was a ton of different things. Like right now I'm actually doing ultimate, which is interestingly the highest level of difficulty that you can attempt in the game, but does not give any, like, it only gives cosmetic rewards. So there's a title and there's a really awesome looking weapon, but it's just for glamour, it's just for appearances. It's not actually like the best weapon that you could get. And I think that's a very interesting choice from the dev team, who maybe not wanting to put excessive pressure on the player. Most people can just go through Savage and get their bis and then feel like, well, I can go do whatever I want to do now. Like, it's that flexibility that I think the game tries to reinforce. Yoshida once in an interview said, we no longer create Savage content for the top of the top players, because that's for Ultimate. Ultimate is for the top players. Compared to other MMOs, a lot of people in FFXIV play the Savage raids, and if we don't get those players to clear, there will be even less players who challenge the next raid tier. We don't even set a proper estimate of this raid will be cleared by so-and-so in so-and-so hours anymore. Instead, we prioritize this difficult is what most players will be able to enjoy together. So when designing the Savage raids, they ask themselves, how hard can we push the majority of players where they can still bring their friends in, still have a good time playing the game together?
That does not mean week 1. So the way they challenge top of top players is that week one it is tuned very differently than when you have acquired all of the gear from it. And so as you get into groups where people heavily outgear, the current tier of Savage could be cleared by people at 510 item level. People are regularly now 520, 522, 523 without having started their Savage grind. I went into my first Savage fight of this tier at 521, an 11 item level difference over what the tier required. That is, so you, when they're tuning this, just keep in mind that's something that happens in World of Warcraft too. People will be watching the World First race and they'll see people struggle with a fight and they're like, well, if they're struggling with it, how are people supposed to get through it? It's going to have to get nerfed. The gear will handle that. That is a soft nerf that kind of fades in over time.
And I want to add that if you just hear that quote without ever doing Savage raids, you might think to yourself, oh, well, the Savage raids are dumbed down. They're easy. They're not. They're really not. I mean, like, there's 4 fights in every tier. I'm just going to quickly explain this. The first boss is pretty easy, pretty accessible, and they get a little harder until the last boss is, like, pretty beastly and pretty challenging to do, and will take a while depending on your skill level. But the point is that
in E9, there's kind of 2 mechanics that really trip up most new players, even now that we have the strats documented so much. By the time you get to E12, the final of this tier, right? 9, 10, 11, 12, that's our 4 for the final tier. By the time you get to 12 Savage, it's not uncommon to say, tonight we're working on getting to this phase. That's our objective. The objective is not to clear the fight. The objective is to get to the next phase. And should we get there, we'll work on the phase after that. But if we don't, that's okay. We'll come back another night. So when new players are blind clearing this, especially if there's more than 1 or 2 in the party, and especially if those people, this is their first Savage tier, it is not uncommon to see people progging a single phase as opposed to E9 at this point. While people will put up a party saying they're trying to clear just brambles or just tower, or just tiles, excuse me, I've watched streamers go into those parties, and then the moment they clear that phase, they get the clear. And so there is definitely a scale up. Just like in anything, that's the objective of the tuning. It doesn't mean every single tier of every single raid is going to be that way. That's the objective of the tuning. And we have had times in this game where even the normal of something ended up kind of acting as a story block for people because they needed to clear it. And at the beginning, at launch, it was a little more difficult than what people were expecting. And people who maybe play this game mostly for story were getting into groups and couldn't do mechanics at the level because it hadn't been asked of them. They had not had to learn the game to that level. And so we've had times in this game where the tuning creeps up a little harder.
that you can clear Savage because that is how it is designed for the majority of people to be able to do the content and have fun and not get so stressed that they quit in the middle of it.
And coming in late, like patch 5.57, when they start to like change the way echoes work and stuff like that, is a great time to go in and attempt things if you've been nervous about it.
Up your best in slot gear, feeling like you've reached the top of the mountain, and then you're free to fly and do whatever you want to do, like even play other games if you want. You won't fall behind too bad. It's just a very chill approach that, in not putting excessive pressure on you, gives you the freedom and the flexibility to decide for yourself what you want to do instead of telling you what you should be doing. It's not pigeonholing you into any particular sort of content, and it respects your time enough to give you the autonomy to decide what you want to do. And whatever you choose, you will be rewarded for the time spent doing that. I think that actually ties back to the first point that I made about the dev attitude to the players. I think that the devs need to have a certain level of respect for the player before they are willing to give the player the amount of freedom and autonomy that we tend to have in this game, and not, push you in any one way or tell you this is the thing that you need to be doing. This is what we want you to be doing. They don't do that. It's really up to you. And that's pretty refreshing. The story, everyone knows, is amazing. It's one of the best reviewed Final Fantasy games ever across all of the franchise for good reason. Shadowbringers has been phenomenal, and more than that, it centers you as the hero of the story, which is incredibly refreshing depending on what game you are coming from. I wanted to say something that's been refreshing for me after doing a lot of other stories in the game, like job stories, side quest stories. There's one thing that always is there. There's this one theme that's always there, and that is hope. I think that at its very core, that is what this game is about. I realize that not everybody knows the paladin guy in the trailer. Like, that's supposed to represent you, the player, your character in this game world as the hero of this story. And I feel like maybe the reason why the core of Final Fantasy XIV stories, not just the main story, but a lot of stories is about hope, not giving up on people, is because it's sort of the story of Final Fantasy XIV in a meta way. Like, if you look back on 1.0, what a disaster it was, how everybody had given up on this game. I myself heard about it back then when I was still playing WoW and thought, wow, I heard that game sucks. I'm not going to play the game. And then, you know, we have Realm Reborn. We had Yoshida come in and change everything. And he believed, like, he had hope for this game. I mean, we've got a pandemic going on. We've got people at each other's throats constantly on the internet and everywhere else, and it's just very refreshing to be able to log in and hear a tale of hope, a tale where you don't give up on people easily. Can you tell me, like, what you feel has made Final Fantasy XIV stand out? And that can be good or bad. I know I've been pretty positive here because I'm feeling really positive about the game right now after the Bunny Boy announcement. Y'all, like, after the Male Viera announcement, I have been like a ray of sunshine about this game. I can't remember the last time I had a problem with anything. We'll see how long this lasts. But truly, let me know what you think is special to Final Fantasy XIV in the comment section down below. I would love to hear.
Guys, there's a lot special about this game. I think their consistency, their ability to show up, you know, even if they have to trim things from a patch cycle, their ability to put content out on time, their ability to communicate where they're at, what their plans are, be willing to pivot those based on kind of a mix of what they think is best for the game as professional developers and what we, the community, are saying that it is we like and we don't like about content. You know, their job is to listen to that and say, okay, but what are you really saying? Because, you know, giving us directly what we want, literally word for word, may not always be what's best for the long-term health of our enjoyment of the game. And I think that's what sets it apart for me. I think what sets it apart is execution. I think that World of Warcraft right now is probably setting out with the same intention. They wanted to put patches out on time. They wanted those patches to be full featured. They wanted people to like their game. They showed up to work on a good game. They work at Blizzard because they care about Blizzard. They work on World of Warcraft because they like World of Warcraft. There are a lot less stressful jobs that they could go take if that was the goal. They could go work for another studio. I think that they worked there because they took that job and they were excited to get a job at Blizzard. They told their friends and their family they were thrilled when they got that job. And, you know, comparing these two games directly right now, I would say that what sets them apart is the execution. And execution's not always up to you. You know, you can do everything in your power. You can dump in passion. You can dump in hours. And sometimes things just don't work out. The question is, how do you pick yourself back up? And what do you tell the people you've disappointed? And I think that the WoW team in general could do a better job communicating. I think Ian taking in a interview with Mike from Preach Gaming, that's a big deal. That's he's done that sort of thing in the past, but like, keep going. And I think that, having patches out on time when people are saying, wow, I'm a raider and I really realize I don't like open world content. You probably never liked open world content. You probably didn't like it in BFA. You probably didn't like it in Legion. But right now you're doing it because there isn't whatever it is you'd prefer to be doing. And so I think continually delivering patch content can kind of cover up if there's 10 pieces of content in the game and you only ever get to the top 4. You may not have ever liked number 8 or 9. But you're just getting all the way down your list right now, and so there's just a lot of fatigue. And so the ability to execute is something to be admired here. The ability to deliver, because that's something that there's got to be something special they're doing. I don't think it's as simple as passion. I don't think it's as simple as money, because I think there are other teams that have that. But there is a skill level there. There is something that, and I think it's come from hard work. I think they've learned from their mistakes. They've had growing pains, and they've come in and they've put in the work. They've come in and Yoshi P doesn't just care about this game. He's also good at his job. It's not just a question of like, does Ian care about this game? Like, I think Yoshi P is just doing a better job managing his resources. And that's not to say Ian can't. I just think right now it's not showing. And so if he can, like, show us. Ian came from caring about this community and went and worked for the company and worked his way up. He's shown dedication to it. So I think saying that that's not the case isn't fair. Saying that you disagree on what he's focusing on right now is a much more fair statement. I wish World of Warcraft the best, but I think what makes Final Fantasy XIV unique right now is that in the face of something that has stalled almost every game development studio worldwide, Final Fantasy seems to be flourishing. Final Fantasy seems to be just coming out of this saying like, yeah, we lost about like 6 to 8 weeks. What about you guys? And they're just charging on. Everybody's like, 6 to 8 weeks? I was inside for a year and a half. And so I think it's just incredible how fast they pivoted, and incredible how fast they've said, you know what, this is what we think needs to be done. And it turns out in hindsight, that was a pretty good call. So way to go, Final Fantasy. Welcome new players. Go hit subscribe on Zepla. I will see you guys next time talking about some gaming. Kinda.